Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Ken's Corner podcast. And I'm your host, Ken, and I want to thank you so much for joining me today. You could have been anywhere, but you chose to be here with me. So let me go ahead and get things started off correctly. Testing, 1, 2 to 4, 2 to 3. Testing, 1, 4, 3. It is all love, baby. So as I said before, welcome to the Ken's Corner podcast. I'm your host, Ken. First thing I want you to be able to do is please subscribe to all of my social media outlets. As you can see, it's scrolling at the bottom. It's at Instagram at Ken's Corner KG, Twitter at Ken's Corner Ken's, and then on Facebook, Ken's Corner. And you can also interact with me on my website, which is www.kenscorner.co. That's www.kenscorner.co. If you feel led to give, please make sure you give to my Cash App. That's $ capital K, capital E-N, capital G, double O-D-R-U-M. That's capital K-E-N, capital G, double O-D-R-U-M. That's Ken Goodrum, $ in front of it, for any type of monetary gifts that you would like to help with the podcast as we continue to grow, or as I continue to grow. I keep saying we, and it's I. But it's a team. So it is a team behind me. I'm just a talent in front, the ideas, all that, but I have a team behind me. So what are we going to get into today that is happening on the corner that we can talk about? First and foremost, my heartfelt prayers. And I'm going to dedicate a show to it. But the people over in Palestine, yeah, it's really a jacked up situation over there. Yeah, it's really bad, and it's really a very long, tumultuous, very intricate, and very nuanced discussion. There are many bases that you can approach it from. One of the things that you can approach it from, as I forgot to hit record for the audio, so got to make sure I get that together. Doing a podcast is always funny because there's so many things that can go wrong. You have all the best intentions to get everything right, and then at the last second you draw a brain fart. For me, I had forgot to hit click on the audio aspect of it, but the video was all good. So going back to what I was saying is that the issue over in Palestine is just very traumatic and it's very sad. And again, it's very nuanced, it's very complicated. The basic of it is, one of many, but I believe the main issue is who has the rightful heir to the Holy Land based upon the Abrahamic covenant. And so depending on what you believe, that's what side you want. But let's make no mistake about what's going on over there. It is genocide. And so let's make sure I'm very clear what's going on over there as far as genocide. But my prayers go out. The main thing, what else was going on since the last time I've joined you? I have been very grateful to watch my son go ahead and graduate. He will be graduating from high school, and watching as he matriculated through school, I watch him as he navigated his way through sports and through social things, and just watching him to develop and become the young man that he is now. As a dad, I'm super proud of him. And so I'm very thankful for being a dad. I think that for me, I know for me, as I've said many times, that to me, being a father is the only thing I think I've gotten right in life, even with my mistakes. And although I know, not to sound cocky, I know I've done great things in life, but for me, being a dad has been the thing that has been the greatest thing. And I have wonderful children, and they have done nothing but give me joy and in fatherhood. So watching him go through prom, he was decked out. His outfit was like he was, as the kids say, he was lit. what's a new term? He was it was a new term he just said. I can't remember off the top of my head. But he really looked nice. He really looked nice. And so watching him and his date and watching him and his friends, go to prom, it just brought back a lot of memories and everything. So just happy for him, and just looking at this graduation to be an outward culmination of all the hard work that he's put in on the inside. I mean, behind the scenes, as far as his grades and everything, had it not been for just the one semester or quarter marking period with the COVID situation and him having to go on school online, he was not built for online. And it was during the football season, and they had a situation with the actual program was using, but he fought through, did his best as far as that's concerned. So I'm proud of him. Excuse me, get a little drink. He fought through, so I'm very proud of him on that. And yeah, so he dang near busted 4.0 this past time. So just a great kid, great all around young man, excuse me. Scholarships, full ride to school. A dad can't be any prouder. So just shout out to him. Shout out to the class of 2021. You did it. This is a very special class. Even on the collegiate level, shout out to the class of 2021, to everyone who graduated with their undergrad, master's, JD, Juris Doctorates, their doctoral degrees, their degree, Doctor of Divinity, Masters of Divinity. If you graduated, you got a sheet of paper. Congratulations to you, class of 2021. This was a very hard year for you, and you deserve it. You deserve all the praise and everything to be able to persevere through this storm called COVID. And please make sure that you go out and make a mark on your world. So today's topic I want to talk about stems from a situation that's going on currently in real time with Joe Budden and the Joe Budden podcast. Joe Budden, as if you're a first-time listener of the King's Corner podcast, he, for me as a person in this podcast space, is the reason why, and gave me the encouragement to keep up and do it. I had released a podcast early and never put it out. I think I put it out when I first learned how to use Audacity, and then stopped for a couple years. And then I heard the Joe Budden podcast and just saw how he interacted. And he was the reason why I decided to go ahead and do this. With that being said, he decided to have a podcast with his friends, Rory and Maul, and was looking at that podcast as three guys who sat around and talked about various topics, from music to politics to sports to relationship issues and things of that nature. And one of the things that attracted me to that podcast is and I'll call it, and I'm very precise of my words, the illusion of vulnerability and reality that they had in their interactions. And so as the characters developed on the podcast, you grew to know people just strictly based upon their interactions from strictly podcasts, not really knowing too much about their personal life, although I do follow Joe Budden because and it's water in this cup. Just to make sure I let everybody know it's water in this cup. And so being able to be a fan of his music, big fan of his music, big fan of his lyricism and all those nature. So he was just a person who I just admired from afar. And then again, as he became into this podcast space, it really gave me more of an insight on the person he allowed me to see. And so as I looked at the podcast and I looked at things that they were doing, you start to either like or dislike based upon what you see. And so for me, just from a podcast standpoint, Joe Budden showed, in my opinion, the illusion of vulnerability. And I'm going to keep using that word illusion, not the fact that they were being nefarious or anything like that. But however, you have to understand, when the lights come on, there is a certain aspect of theatrics that goes along with any type of entertainment. So podcast goes on. They talked about ownership. They talked about navigating, this particular business. They talked about array of topics. I came on probably like episode. I probably started listening to the Joe Budden podcast probably around episode 870. So they're on 300 or something now, I think, or 400. 400 or something. So I've been very, ingrained in this podcast. And so one of the things, just from a podcast interaction standpoint, I just didn't care for it. Not the fact that I didn't care for him as a person, but I didn't care for the interaction of Mal. I felt like he was just too cool, too laid back. He really talked in very vague generalities without really being specific on several topics. And for me, Rory, even though he was a better conversationalist, I just felt like he tried too hard, and I understand how, in my own personal life, there were times, that I tried too hard just to fit in and be a part of the thing. So, but I dealt with it because Joe Budden was a star. He carried the show. He ran the show. His rants are classic, and his insight on things are classic. And not to say that the guys didn't contribute, but just overall, over time, I just stopped, over time I took a break because there was just something off about the energy and the interaction. So my oldest son was the first one to notice. He called me. He's like, "Dad, have you noticed that, Rory and Joe going through something?" And I was like, "I don't know, the son." I was like, "I haven't listened to it in a few weeks, actually a few months." He's like, "No, Dad, go listen to it because I think they about to like really start fighting on the show." So I went back, caught up on the old episodes, and I just noticed some things were off. Fast forward, story less long. Next thing you know, so this is where Joe Budden is in the news right now. He literally fired his whole crew. He fired Rory and Mal on air. And so the backstory was they were having some questions about, and again, it depends on what side you want to believe. I'm not here. The point of this podcast is not here to convince you that Joe Budden is right and convince you they're wrong or vice versa. It's just to give you a little backstory, and so that when I go into my particular viewpoint on the situation and how it relates to myself and how it can relate to you, you'll have some backstory. And so they were supposed to be some upset about something about the accounting, money. Joe Budden said that he gave them the information. They said they didn't get it, or they didn't get it in the manner in which they thought they should got it. Joe Budden felt like he did. It was some tension. Joe Budden had told Roy, take a couple of days off. Mal got mad at that. So neither one of them showed. Mal didn't show up, but he had told Roy not to. Mal didn't show up. On Mal's standpoint, he felt like he was just taking a stance for what was right. They came back, thought they had pieced it up, did a couple shows together, took a vacation, came back, and that's when Joe Budden fired him. And so he was getting killed in the media because he is a big media personality. If you go back, YouTube him and do a little bit of history on him, many people may not like him. I'm not even going to lie. Many people may not like him. But I, on the other hand, really liked him. And I really liked him from this standpoint because, and this is where we're going to get into today, is vulnerability. I was talking to a young lady, beautiful spirit, inside and out, and she was talking about how she wanted to be more vulnerable, or just wanted to be able to have the confidence to be able to show her work, her art, in as far as different things, as it relates to, I think she does many different, she's very multifaceted as far as the art. Oh, thank you, Stephanie. I love you, sweetie. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And so as we were talking, we were just, conversing back and forth. And one of the things she said, as far as vulnerability, like, it's hard to be vulnerable in this space, especially in this digital space and things of that nature. And she really she just needed, help with that. And so as I was talking with her, I said, one of the things about being vulnerable, and which is going to get me to the point where I am right now, is that, do we create the space to be vulnerable? Because in my opinion, based upon what I saw on the podcast, Joe Budden is a very easy target. He takes on a lot. He talks about his mishaps in his personal life. He talks about his mishaps in his professional career. He talks about his strengths. He talks about his weakness. I mean, he, at least going back to what I said at the beginning, he gives the illusion, because again, although a lot of it is documented, I do understand that there are certain aspects of protection that you do use when you use this word vulnerability. And so when he did a lot of talking, I was able to relate to him. Hey, Steph, love you too, sweetie. Thank you so much. And I love your energy too. I can feel it through the screen. I was able to relate to it because I do my best to be pretty much an open book. But I had to understand that I'm an open book to a certain extent. So let me read the definition of what vulnerability means, and then how we interpret that and exercise it. And sometimes it's much different than what the word actually means. So vulnerability is the quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. I'm gonna read it one more time. Vulnerability is the quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. Now, when I read that definition, I understood within myself the reason why I'm only vulnerable to a certain extent. Because in my mind's eye, before I really took that definition to the lab, I tell it like it is. You know, what you see is what you get. I don't care what people say about me. But it deep down inside, people, I'm telling you now, a lot of things that people have said to me have really hurt me. Because when you're vulnerable, I look at it, and even because as a mentor, and I mentor students of all ages, and I would say, like, you know, when you put your heart out there, it's like you giving them a card, and you don't know what they're going to do with that card. When you put your feelings out there, you never know what somebody's going to do with that. And when you believe that you've been hurt, how you internalize that hurt, or no, let me not say believe that you've hurt. Something that somebody did hurt you. How you internalize that and how you act that out, then that is what people really start talking about, as opposed, of what really happened to get you in that way. A few podcasts ago, I did a podcast when I talked about the spark. And I said, everybody concentrates on the fire, but nobody concentrates on the spark. Thank you, son. I love you so much. Congratulations to everything you're doing in Florida. We got a link soon. I have an interview that I need to do soon, but I want you to be my next interview. I appreciate that, man. I love you so much. This is my son, Dion. He's doing big things in the fashion world. Keep your eye out for him. He's already dope. The world just ain't caught up with him. A lot of people caught him with him. The world ain't caught up with him. So I love you, son. And so when you say certain things, it hurts. It hurts. Because there have been many times I've given myself to people thinking that the space was safe, but they didn't know how to handle the information or the emotions that I gave them at that time. Now, that doesn't always make people bad people. And that's the one thing that Joe Budden talked about, because he actually brought his therapist on the show for a segment, and she was dope. And a lot of times, a good therapist really doesn't talk about what other people do. And that's what gets in it, because again, I'm in therapy. So one of the things that is very hard, it was very hard for me, is the fact that I say, well, such and such did this, and because they did this, I did that, and then my therapist will listen, and he was like, okay, but he didn't it's only been on 2 occasions where he really concentrated on what they did and how they, what they did to me, but he more so concentrated on my reaction. All right. When I worked at one of my previous jobs, we had this thing called ART, and And one of the things at ART is it's called the ABCs: actions, behavior, consequence. And we talk about the only thing that you can control is your behavior. All right. The only thing that you can control is your behavior. The action is whatever happened. All right. So whatever happened is the action. So we use the example: somebody stepped on your shoes. All right, that's the action. The behavior is, once you step on my shoes, I'm gonna hit you in your mouth. The consequence is I'm going to jail, or you pull out a gun and shoot me. Out of that scenario, the only thing that you can control is your behavior. Hey, Linda, this is everybody. This is Miss Linda. This is the interview that I'm doing next. She thought I forgot about you. I didn't forget about you, love. I had to get some things straightened out, but we are next. So this is the interview. Please look out for this dope author. We are going to talk about women as far as their creativity, all that stuff. Don't want to give away the whole show, but Linda, she's going to be my next guest on the show. Love you, sweetie. And so when our behavior, that's the only thing that you can do. So in therapy, good therapy, it concentrates on your behavior, but more importantly, the root on why you do the things that you do. And so Joe Budden is called a psychopath. He's called a lot of things, but a lot of things that he said that I related to, because in one episode, his engineer is Parks. And so they were talking, and Parks, they was all laughing, and somebody said, "Yeah, Joe, you're an asshole." And Joe's like, "Yeah, I know I could be an asshole." And then Parks like, "Yeah, you're really an asshole." But then really quickly he said, "But I don't want to be that anymore. I don't like being that." And that gave me a lot of insight, because a lot of times the things that people do, sometimes they don't really like doing it, but it's whatever the deep rooted thing that is within you causes you the reaction. So therefore, the lack of vulnerability that you have to people is based upon your experience of past hurts, past traumas, past interactions. And so I had to look at my own life and to be very, very, very transparent. Even with my own wife, when I met my wife, I told her, and I'm still working through it to this day. I told her, I said, "You met me at a time that's both good and bad, because in past relationships, I've been hurt. And so there's a wall around my heart, and you are both on the inside and you on the outside. Don't make the stuff that how I react right. I'm not excusing it, but I'll be honest, I'm not told. When I look back at a lot of things, it's taken me a long time to be totally vulnerable to her. It takes me a long time to be totally vulnerable to a lot of people. Why? Because Ken deals with abandonment issues. Again, not beating up my dad, I've made peace with that. However, that abandonment for me is really big. So therefore, when I get close to someone and they do something to me, man, it really hurts the core of my being. It takes me a long time to come out of certain things. It does. So a lot of times y'all see me laughing, smiling. I'm love to have fun, jokes, and I make jokes on the internet and stuff. But y'all don't know how many times there was a time, last year, I was crying literally 2 times a week, feeling lonely, feeling by myself, feeling like nobody was there for me. And part of that reason why is that I didn't really want to be vulnerable, because of what that definition said, because of the possibility of being attacked. For the possibility of someone taking my heart and taking my feelings and throwing it in my face. Thanks, dog. Rue. So we hold those things in until something sparks us. For Joe Budden, He felt like, you my friends. I'm feeding y'all. There's obviously a misunderstanding as far as, what that looked like as far as ownership and partnership and all that. That's a whole bunch of technical stuff that I don't know about. I heard all sides of the story. You believe what you want to believe. But one of the core things of it is the fact that he had abandonment. He said it. He's like, Joe Budden said, I have abandonment issues. If you follow his career on a personal career, he's been on Love and Hip Hop, and the man has been hurt not once but twice. He done proposed to people. He done got dumped at the altar. Like, it's all kind of like, this man done been through a lot, and he's very candid with it. He's very candid with it. And so that fear and the possibilities of putting myself out there, not really knowing what you're going to do with it, and the fact that I love you. This is the thing about it. I love you. So I'm not talking. I'm talking about any relationship, friendships, situationships, ships, whatever ship that you want to put on your title. You could love a person, but if they do something, it's like And so now the next person or the next group of people that you deal with, they have to face the aftermath and the residue of your lack of vulnerability because of the residue of what you've been through. And that situation really touched me a lot. It really made me reconsider a lot of stuff. As far as the people who love me, you love me, and I know you love me. You've shown me you love me. I have no doubt that you love me. So I'm not speaking in code to anybody. All right. I've had this particular candid conversation with a lot of people who love me. And my thing that I've told people is that I know I love you. I know I've given you my best. I know I've given you my all. And guess what? I'm not overly going to explain myself to no more to anybody who claim they know me, because I know that I've been vulnerable to you. I know I've given you my heart. I know I've given you certain things. And in times you have hurt me, not intentionally, but even though you hurt me, I stayed in there. I stayed in the fight. So therefore, if you choose, and again, I got a situation where people don't speak to me no more. Guess what? That's your fault. It hurt. I ain't even gonna front. It hurt because, again, I was vulnerable. I was a friend to you. I'm a family member to you. I'm a mentor to you. And then you decide to do something. Okay, cool. It's cool. You're on that side of the street. You're on that side of the street. What's up, good brother? Yeah, this is my good guy Eddie right here, man. Good dude in school, man. He from New York to NY. Met him on the basketball court. He brought that tricky New York play. We in Cleveland, we don't do all that. But yeah, man, that's my dude right here. Shout out to you, man. Love you, brother. Pray that you and your family are doing well, man. Thank you so much. But yeah, I look at those things, man. I look at that, and then what ends up happening is that when you have that residue, when you have those type of things, when you go through those situationships and all those ships, it makes you less vulnerable. But one thing I found out is it makes you less vulnerable to yourself. You stop listening to yourself. Like, you really don't let yourself in on yourself. And I know that sounds crazy. But let me clarify what it is. Every morning, my commute to work is about 25, 30 minutes. And in that 25 and 30 minutes, I take that time to just really decompress. Even though I just woke up early in the morning, I say, how am I going to affect my day? I listen to a morning prayer. I do my best to do daily affirmations, but I never, I always sometimes have full-fledged arguments in my head. So I have full-fledged discussions, about things I've gone through my day. And what I had to realize, it was hard for me to admit to me some things that I was going through. it was hard for me to admit to myself about things that I was going through. Even though I know silence doesn't translate well on audio podcast, but I want to take just a couple seconds for you to think about that. You're right. It impacts all aspects of your life. So when I look at those type of things, I'm like, wait a minute, I gotta be vulnerable to myself. I gotta let myself in and say, okay, Ken. And what I mean by vulnerable to yourself is being able to acknowledge the root issues of why you respond the way you respond. I can't remember the term now. I can't remember the term. And I know my therapist is going to be mad at me for this. But one of the things that I do, because I've been told in my life that I overthink things. I'm a thinker. I think about all possibilities, all outcomes in every situation in life. I do, and Joe Budden said again, he psychoanalyzes friends. I psychoanalyze all y'all. Like I sit back, I take what I know our relationship to be, and I play out different scenarios and things in that nature. And, you know, I see your successes. I hear about some of your challenges in life, and I say, okay, this person responds to this. And it's a very intricate, intellectual, emotional chess game, checker game, and battleship game, tic-tac-toe, whatever you want to call a game in my head that I go through. So when I do that to myself, the thing that my therapist says, you have to be intentional. Think about thinking. He said, I'm glad that you do that. He said, you have the fundamental basis of doing it. He said, but I want you to be more intentional about thinking. Think about thinking and how you think about situations. Right, brother. It's not just men. And that's a different topic for a different day, about do men have safe places created to talk about our feelings. But you're right about that. And so that self-reflection stuff is tough. It is emotional. Because in some aspects, when my therapist told me to think about thinking, think about your thought process, think about the things that you're really doing, I said, oh man, you're right. Why do I respond that way? Why do a one little thought can take me down a whole rabbit hole for an hour? A simple what's up. That's why I've gotten away. I still text people, but when people are really on my heart, even though I still do text, but I do my best in my thought process. If I think about you, I'm gonna call you. Like, I want to hear your voice. I want to get back to hearing voices and seeing people and interacting with feelings, because in text messages, you don't read the text message based upon what they're saying. You read the text message based upon what you're going through. So a simple, what up or what's going on, depending on what you're going through that day, and depending if you feel like you feel a way about a person, or if you feel like that person feel a way about you, you can read it totally wrong. But if you don't take the time to be vulnerable with yourself, the thing you can't do, or I don't tell people what they can and can't do. The thing I suggest that you don't do is you don't attack yourself. You do your best not to attack yourself. And one of the things that Joe Budden's therapist said, which I found very interesting, is how do you define, because words are powerful, how do you define a problem? So for example, Joe Budden said he was hurt because he felt like his friends didn't trust him. So if you have a feeling that your friends don't trust you, then you're going to respond in a way, because in your mind, your definition is they didn't trust me. So you're going to respond in that way. It doesn't make it right or wrong. You're just going to respond that way. She said, well, why do you feel like they feel that way? He said, because of X, Y, Z. She said, but why do you define it that way? And I said, oh, shoot. And it opened up a much bigger realm for me to think about. So there are situations where I believe that if I redefine, not just, not in, there are some situations in black and white, but honestly, the majority of the world lives in the gray area. People claim stuff is black and white, but there are a lot of nuances to a lot of things. And so if somebody did something to me, I'm like, okay, you did X, Y, Z, and I stand on my whatever, consider my morals and principles or whatever. But if I look back and say, okay, they didn't, going back to Joe Budden's situation, she said, what if they were just doing what they believe was best for them? She said, if you redefine it that way, yeah, you may still be hurt, but your reaction to it may be a little different, because in that you're not looking at it as that they're purposefully trying to sabotage. That was it, the word sabotage. They wasn't trying to sabotage the show. They were doing what they felt that they were doing what they felt was best for them. And I could tell right then and there, I saw the light bulb kind of go. I'm like, oh, okay. And since then, he's come back to publicly apologize. Kevin Hart said some things about him. He got mad at Kevin Hart, but instead of getting mad at Kevin Hart, he called Kevin Hart. Him and Kevin Hart had a heart-to-heart talk. And in the end, Joe Budden said, you know what? Although the outcome had to be the outcome, me firing him is what needed to happen. The way I did it was wrong. My leadership skills, like he was able to be vulnerable with himself. He was able not to attack himself. Royce the 5'9" called him and said, hey, man, this is the first step of healing, but hey, stand on your principles and things of that nature. And what are you going to do to make it right? But you've taken the first step to make it right. And the main person that you have to make it right with, and what I want to end up closing with, is creating that space of vulnerability. So therefore that space of creativity can come out, that space of power can come out, that space of the things that you need to be able to do can come out, that self-confidence, all of those things. It starts with that vulnerability to yourself, so that you're not attacking yourself. And the more you're vulnerable and in tune with yourself, you create better vulnerable spaces for other people. And in my personal opinion, which is not the gospel, I think we're here on earth for those interactions. One of my favorite movies is Crash. If you haven't seen Crash, go see it. And it's been so long since I've seen it, but I'm paraphrasing the actual things. Like we go through life until we crash into one another. And then once that thing happened, that's when you look up and start, seeing what's going on. It's a whole world around us. However, if we don't create those intentional spaces, like for example, the people, and I thank you so much for the people who came on here and interacted with this podcast. I have a personal relationship with each and every last one of you. I love you all. I love you all in different ways, but I love you all. You all have added at some point in my life a value to my life. The only way that happened, though, is because at some point there was a time where we made ourselves vulnerable to one another in some aspect and area of our life. My dog, Delquan, me and that dude have been through some stuff. And that man has shown me nothing. It's maybe things that I've done in the past that he may not be like, hey, dog, I don't agree with that. I may have done some things to him. Like he may think, oh, man, that's messed up. But that man has never left my side. We have sat, we've cried together, we've talked about life together, we've celebrated one another, we've held each other accountable but you can't do that if the space of vulnerability is not made. And you cannot, in my experience in life, in my short blip of a life here on this earth, is that we cannot do that until we are vulnerable with ourselves. So I know it's scary. My encouragement and my call to action is, I know it's scary. An exercise that was taught to me in church by our pastor at the time, Pastor Glenn Jones, and he would have this thing where you look in the mirror, and I've also seen this particular exercise done at professional conferences that I've been at, and I've actually done it. You take a handheld mirror, or you just go in the bathroom and look in the mirror, look deep in your eyes, and tell yourself 5 good things, but also tell yourself 5 things that you need to work on. And sometimes it's easier to, for me, it was hard to look at my own self in the eye. I couldn't be vulnerable with myself because I felt like, whoa, you've done X, Y, Z. You said this. This person may not has hurt because of something you said. This person has hurt because of something that you've done. And so for the first time I did it, I couldn't even do the exercise. Then after that, I was able to do the exercise and say, okay, this particular thing is good. This particular thing I need to work on. And it became easier. And I was able to be vulnerable with myself. So therefore, when I'm with other people, man, I'm not going to say I don't judge, because I think everybody judges to a certain extent. But if we are to believe the Bible, it says, "Judge not, lest ye be judged by the same measure." So if I'm gonna judge you, I'm judging you, but I'm also willing to be judged by that exact same measure. But I'm not judging to the point where I and hopefully I haven't done this to anybody. And if I have, please let me know so I can apologize and make that thing right. But I don't judge you to the point where we can't fellowship. I don't judge anybody because I understand what a struggle means. I understand what fighting for certain things means. I want to create a space that you feel comfortable, that you don't feel like you're going to be attacked emotionally, where you're not going to be attacked intellectually, or you're not going to be attacked mentally by me in my presence. And that thing that we hold sacred, I'm going to hold that sacred because you trust me. You trusted me enough to be vulnerable to me. You said, hey, regardless of the fact that I am fighting and I'm hurt and I'm concerned about these things, I'm still going to share this moment with you. Man, there's nothing, to me, that's one of the greatest things in life, man, is sharing those moments with people. Those moments that maybe only you and that person can talk about and go through. That's your moment. Regardless of and irrespective of anybody else's moments, that's me and your moment. So I want to create that space for anybody of my listeners, to my listeners worldwide, because I do have listeners worldwide. I even have listeners in Israel, so that made the beginning of this podcast kind of awkward. But I want to be vulnerable to you. I want to be vulnerable to me. And you may not know me, but again, it takes time. Friendship takes time. Relationships take time. It doesn't happen overnight. These type of things, and going back to the therapy aspect just one more time, it's not, therapy is work. It's not just you going and talking and you go, no, my therapist gives me work. I have a worksheet, and he even got a little upset at me because I was telling him I was going through some things, and I was saying how he said, well, how did you think about this? How you process? And I told him what I did. He said, did you refer to the sheet I gave you? And I was like, and I kept, I was me and him joking. I said, yeah. So about this other thing, he's like, no, did you work on it? Did you use the worksheet that I gave you? And I said, nah, I didn't. I ain't even gonna hold you, man. I didn't. And he was frank with me, man. He said, this don't work if you don't work. She says, my issue is I shut down toward people when I feel like if I'm going to be attacked emotionally and vulnerable. Yes. And that is the natural defense mechanism, is shutting down or lashing out. And not in this particular case, which is, my love, is the fact that some people shut down because they don't want to address the conflict. They don't want to have that uncomfortable conversation. Relationship, if you are in a relationship, any type of ship, and you have not had several uncomfortable conversations, I ain't talking about arguments, I'm talking about uncomfortable conversations where we're not wanting to berate one another, but I really want to have an exchange, an intellectual and emotional exchange to you so I can truly understand what you're going through. It doesn't mean that we're going to agree, but I'm not going to lash out at you. Then that relationship is not solid. I don't care if you're married. I don't care. That's not a solid relationship. But you're right. Shutting down, because I do. The reason why I shut down is because of my mouth, because I got a slick mouth. I do. I do. Let's see. And you know exactly what and who. Yeah. That's one thing about interactive podcasts. Yeah, I have a slick mouth. I think quick, and the reason why, because I don't care if you're my friend. I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna give everybody a little secret about me. If you're in my space, if you know me, trust me, I've sized you up. This is not a good thing to have, but one of my defense mechanisms is my mouth, because I got cracked on so much as a kid. I got talked about so much as a kid. And one of my defense mechanisms is I had to come back and I had to have jokes and I had to have all those things to get people up off of me. You know, that was you had to be in the den with the hyenas back in the day. So I ain't gonna lie, I've sized all of my people up. I even sized up my own kids, because my own kids got slick mouths. And every now and then I gotta let them know, hey, daddy still got it. So you say something slick, trust me, yes, I know you are a product of me, but I could still crack on you because you're my kid. All right. But we do, in all seriousness, we shut down because we don't want to face that attack. And now, I want to say this before I end. Don't put yourself in a situation to be attacked if the person is only there to attack you. There was a meme that somebody wrote, and I totally agree with this. And this refers to a couple of people in my inbox right now that just said some things throughout this podcast. I'm not part of self-care is removing yourself from people who are purposely wanting to misunderstand you. Best believe there has to be balance with that. So there's people in my life, look, you on that side of the street. And I'm good with it. I'm good. I love relationship. I love relationship. I love fellowship. I love people. But if you just gonna purposefully, and if I've shown you nothing in life that will give you a hint that I'm going to betray you or hurt you, and you choose to believe that about me, man, just stay over there. Stay over there. And I'll just remove myself. I'll remove myself because you're purposefully wanting to misunderstand me. Now, you may be going through some hurt. You may be going through some pain. You may be going through some drama. And it's probably something I did that probably triggered that. And I'm not going to say that I didn't. But let's have that conversation. But if you don't want to have that conversation, that's letting me know that you want to purposefully misunderstand me. And once I see that vibe, you stay over there. Because I got to keep my energy positive. Because I beat myself up enough. I'm learning within the past 4 or 5 years just really to be vulnerable with myself, so I can let the people who really love me allow them to love me. So I hopefully, because I don't want to belabor this particular topic too long. Like I said, I want to keep these things around no more than 45 minutes, hour tops. If it has to go that, if it's by myself, and if I have an interview, it's going to go a little longer because I vibe off people. But I just want to thank you so much. I love the positive energy that everyone has shown me today. Hopefully there was something said here today that will just give you something else to think about. Really look up that word vulnerability and take it to the lab for you and see how that definition and maybe the way you've been operating out of that definition may not have been what the definition was attended to, and be able to create that space for yourself. My thing in this whole pandemic is that it taught me, 1, to sit down. It taught me 2, to slow my mind down. It taught me 3, to really appreciate the people around me. And it taught me to love myself. I'm loving Ken more than I've loved him before, because I put a lot of people before me. And when they went on and did something totally different, it left me out there not knowing who I was. And so I'm not, my therapist told me not to use the word selfish, but I'm taking a very strict audit of my emotional and mental currency, and I'm not giving that to a lot of people anymore. I'm just not. Because I can't continue to keep pouring out an empty cup. So again, thank you so much. Please, as you saw it scrolling down, if you do feel so inclined to give, please contribute to the podcast, and that's Cash App Ken Goodrum. capital KEN, capital GOODRUM, $ in front. My Instagram is Ken's Corner KG. My Twitter is Corner Kens, and my Facebook is Ken's Corner. So just type it in and all the social media platforms. Please follow, share. You can also find me on streaming on all DSPs. Wherever you listen to your podcast, if you want to go back and listen to this again, hopefully there were some nuggets. You can find me on Spotify. You can find me on Apple. The main thing I need you to do is really subscribe to the channel, and then also rate me. I need to work on getting my followers up, which means I need to be more consistent. So that's a challenge I give myself. Also, please subscribe to my YouTube page. Please go to YouTube, type in Ken's Corner Podcast, and you'll see the image that you see in the top right hand corner. This image right up here, that's the actual street corner that I grew up on in Cleveland, Ohio, from the city, not the suburbs. Shout out to everybody in the 216. Respect the code. You know how we do it. And yeah, so as always, thank you so much for joining me. Hopefully something was said that you can utilize. Please keep me in your prayers. I will be praying for you. And as always, I love, I trust, and I respect you. Thank you for joining Ken's Corner Podcast. Peace.